My name is Nora, and I'm 28 years old. I thought my marriage to Ryan was perfect until the day I discovered my savings account was completely empty. For months, I'd been secretly helping my mother-in-law with her finances, but I never imagined they were working together to drain every penny I had. When I confronted my husband, he just looked at me coldly and said, "A teacher's salary wasn't going to get us the lifestyle we deserve anyway." If you're watching this right now, drop a comment letting me know where you're viewing from. Hit that like and subscribe button if you've ever trusted someone who betrayed you. Now let me tell you how I discovered the truth and found my strength again. I met Ryan during my second year of teaching at Oakwood Elementary School. I was 24, passionate about my career, working with third graders, and focused on building my life as an independent woman. Ryan came to our school career day, representing his financial advisory firm. He was 30 confident and immediately caught my attention with his warm smile and the thoughtful way he explained complex financial concepts to my 8-year-old students. After the presentations ended, he lingered in my classroom, helping me clean up the scattered papers and art supplies. Our conversation flowed naturally, and by the end of it, he had asked me to dinner. I said yes without hesitation, something unusual for my typically cautious personality. Our first date was at a small Italian restaurant downtown. Ryan arrived with a single sunflower, remembering I had mentioned they were my favorite when we spoke at the school. That level of attentiveness characterized our entire courtship. He remembered small details about my preferences, planned thoughtful dates based on my interests, and always made me feel valued. As our relationship progressed, I was impressed by Ryan's apparent financial stability. He drove a modest car despite his successful career, talked about the importance of saving for the future, and never seemed extravagant with his spending. These were values that aligned perfectly with mine. Growing up in a middle-class family in Michigan, my parents had always emphasized financial responsibility. My father, a plumber, and my mother, a librarian, taught me the importance of living within my means and saving for emergencies. I had been diligently building my savings since college, putting away a portion of every paycheck, even when I was surviving on ramen noodles as a student teacher. By the time I met Ryan, I had amassed a respectable emergency fund of nearly $40,000. It was my safety net, my pride, and my ticket to eventual home ownership. 3 months into our relationship, Ryan introduced me to his mother, Patricia. She lived in a beautiful colonial-style home in an upscale neighborhood about 30 minutes from the city. She greeted me with a warm hug and had prepared an elaborate lunch for our visit. "Ryan has told me so much about you," Patricia said, ushering me into her impeccably decorated dining room. "It's so wonderful that he's found someone who shares his values." Patricia was charming and attentive that day, asking thoughtful questions about my teaching career and sharing stories about Ryan's childhood. I left feeling like I had already been accepted into their family. It was a stark contrast to some of my previous boyfriends' families, who had made subtle comments about teaching being a noble but not lucrative profession. Looking back now, there were warning signs I completely missed, like the way Patricia casually asked about my salary during dessert, framing it as concern about the state of educational funding, or how she commented that it was so sweet that I was passionate about a job that barely pays the bills. Ryan had quickly jumped in to change the subject, and I'd appreciated what I thought was his protection. Another red flag appeared when Ryan became secretive about certain purchases. He would change the subject when I asked about the new golf clubs that appeared in his closet, or the expensive bourbon he brought home. At the time, I assumed he was just a private person about money, and I respected that boundary. I couldn't have been more wrong. After dating for a year, Ryan proposed during a weekend trip to the coast. The ring was beautiful, but not ostentatious, which I loved. It seemed to represent his sensible approach to finances while still being special. When I called my parents to share the news, they were happy for me, but cautioned me to take my time. "Marriage is forever, sweetheart," my dad said. "Make sure you really know who you're committing to." I assured them I knew exactly who Ryan was: kind, responsible, and devoted. I was certain I had found my perfect partner. During our engagement, Patricia became increasingly involved in our wedding planning. What started as helpful suggestions gradually transformed into firm directives. The small, intimate ceremony I had envisioned morphed into an event with over 200 guests, many of whom I had never met. "These are important connections for Ryan's career," Patricia explained when I expressed concern about the growing guest list. "And now there'll be connections for your future too." Ryan sided with his mother, and not wanting to create conflict, I relented. The wedding cost 3 times my original budget, with Ryan and Patricia assuring me it was an investment in our future. I dipped into my savings to cover my portion, telling myself it was a once-in-a-lifetime expense. Our wedding day was beautiful by conventional standards, but it didn't feel like mine. As I walked down the aisle toward Ryan's smiling face, I pushed away a nagging feeling that I had already lost my first battle for equal partnership in our marriage. If only I had recognized then that it wouldn't be the last battle I would lose, nor the most costly. After our honeymoon in Maui, Ryan and I moved into a modest 3-bedroom house in a developing neighborhood. The house needed work, but it had potential, and the price was right for our budget. I was excited to create our first home together, envisioning weekend projects and gradually making the space our own. Patricia had other ideas. She visited frequently, always with suggestions for improvements that far exceeded what we had planned to spend. "This kitchen is simply unworkable," she declared during her first visit. "These cabinets need to be replaced immediately, and that countertop is hopelessly dated." The kitchen was perfectly functional, if not magazine-worthy. I tried to explain that we were planning to save for renovations over time, but Patricia waved away my practical approach. "Ryan deserves to live in a home that reflects his success," she said, her tone making it clear that my teacher's salary couldn't provide the lifestyle she envisioned for her son. Ryan's behavior subtly shifted after we married. The man who had once listened attentively to my opinions now deferred to his mother's judgment. When I tried to discuss it with him, he dismissed my concerns. "Mom just wants the best for us," he would say. "She has great taste and connections with contractors. We should be grateful for her help." We established a financial arrangement that seemed fair at the time. We created a joint account for household expenses, with each of us contributing proportionally based on our salaries. Since Ryan earned significantly more as a financial advisor, he covered about 70% of our shared expenses. We maintained separate personal accounts for our individual spending and savings. This system worked well for the first few months of our marriage, until Patricia called Ryan in tears one evening in early November. After he hung up, Ryan explained that his mother's small business investment had gone wrong. She had put money into a friend's startup that had unexpectedly collapsed, leaving her in a temporary financial bind. "She just needs a small loan to cover her property taxes," Ryan explained. "She's embarrassed to ask, but she doesn't want to pull from her retirement accounts and pay the penalty." The amount she needed was $8,000. It was substantial but not unreasonable, considering Patricia owned an expensive home. I hesitated, not because of the amount, but because something about the situation felt off. "Won't the bank give her a home equity loan?" I asked. Ryan sighed impatiently. "That would take weeks to process, and she needs the money now. Plus the interest rates are terrible. We'd be saving her money by helping." "We could split it," I suggested. "Each take $4,000 from our savings." Ryan looked uncomfortable. "My investment account is tied up right now in a really promising opportunity. I can't liquidate without a hefty penalty." And so, against my better judgment, I wrote a check from my personal savings to Patricia. She accepted it with tears of gratitude, promising to repay me within 3 months, with interest. "You're such a blessing to our family, Nora," she said, hugging me tightly. "I'll never forget this. That first loan was just the beginning." Over the next 6 months, there were always new emergencies. Patricia's roof started leaking. Her car needed expensive repairs, medical bills that her insurance wouldn't fully cover. Each time the story was compelling and the need seemingly urgent. Each time Ryan convinced me to help, and each time the amounts grew larger. $5,000 for the roof, $7,000 for medical bills. By the 6-month mark of our marriage, I had given Patricia nearly $25,000 from my savings. I began to worry. The promised repayments never materialized, only vague assurances that they would come soon when certain investments matured or properties sold. When I raised concerns to Ryan, his reactions became increasingly defensive. "Family helps family, Nora," he would say sharply. "I thought you understood that. Would you want your parents to struggle if we could help them?" The comparison was unfair. My parents had never asked for money, and if they did, I knew they would repay it exactly when promised. But Ryan made me feel selfish for questioning his mother's intentions, so I buried my concerns and continued to help. During this time, my professional life was thriving. I was nominated for Teacher of the Year in our district recognition that came with a modest financial award and significant professional prestige. My principal talked about creating a mentorship position for me that would come with a small stipend increase. The contrast between my growing success at work and my increasing anxiety at home created a constant sense of emotional whiplash. At school, I was respected and valued. At home, I felt increasingly manipulated and diminished. Patricia's attitude toward me shifted as well. The warm, grateful woman who had accepted my first loan was replaced by someone who seemed to feel entitled to my financial help. She no longer thanked me profusely or promised repayment. Instead, she would simply tell Ryan what she needed and he would pressure me to provide it. I tried one more time to discuss my concerns with Ryan, choosing a moment when we were relaxed, sharing a bottle of wine on our back deck one spring evening. "I'm worried about how much money we've given your mum," I said carefully. "We've spent almost all of my savings and I haven't seen any efforts toward repayment." Ryan's face hardened. "So it's about the money for you. My mother has supported me my entire life, and now when she needs help, you're keeping score." "That's not fair," I protested. "I'm just concerned about our financial security. What if one of us loses our job or has a medical emergency? Maybe if you're so worried about money, you should look for a career that actually pays well," he snapped. "Teaching is a nice hobby, but it's hardly going to secure our future." His words stung like a physical slap. Teaching wasn't a hobby. It was my passion and my purpose. And until that moment, I thought Ryan respected that about me. I went to bed that night with a knot in my stomach, the first serious doubt about my marriage taking root in my mind. But even then, I couldn't have imagined how much worse things would get. The morning that changed everything started like any other Tuesday. Ryan had left early for a client breakfast meeting, and I was getting ready for school, mentally reviewing my lesson plans for the day. I decided to check my bank account to make sure my automatic student loan payment had gone through correctly. When I logged in, I stared at the screen in disbelief. My savings account, which should have contained about $15,000, showed a balance of $742.18. My hands started shaking as I clicked through to see the transaction history. There it was, a transfer of $14,000 to our joint account 3 days earlier, a transaction I had never authorized. I called the bank immediately, my voice trembling as I explained the situation to the customer service representative. After verifying my identity, she confirmed what I feared most. "Yes, Mrs. Davis, that transfer was made online using your credentials. Since you're both signatories on the receiving account, it wouldn't trigger our fraud alerts." I hung up and sank to the kitchen floor, my mind racing. There was only one explanation: Ryan had accessed my online banking. He knew my passwords. He had taken my money without asking me. I called the school office with shaking hands, telling them I had a family emergency and needed to take a sick day. Then I waited for Ryan to come home, the hours crawling by as my shock turned to anger. When Ryan finally walked through the door that evening, I was sitting at the dining room table with my laptop open to my bank account. "What's this?" I asked without preamble, turning the screen toward him. Ryan glanced at it casually. "Oh, that. I was going to tell you about that. Mom found this amazing investment opportunity, but the window was closing fast. I knew you'd want to be part of it." "You took $14,000 from my personal savings without asking me," I said, struggling to keep my voice steady. Ryan rolled his eyes. "You're being dramatic. It's just money, and it's a sure thing. Mum's financial advisor friend got her in on the ground floor of this tech startup. We'll double our money in 6 months easy." "That wasn't your decision to make," I said, my voice rising. "You stole from me, Ryan. You stole from your wife." Something in his expression changed then. The charming mask I had fallen in love with slipped, revealing something cold and calculating underneath. "Let's be honest, Nora," he said with a smirk. "Your little teacher's salary and savings were never going to get us where we need to be. Mom and I are thinking bigger for our family's future." The way he said "Mom and I" sent a chill down my spine. "What do you mean, you and your mum? What have you two been doing?" Ryan sighed dramatically, as if I was being particularly slow to understand. "Mom's financial troubles were a test, Nora. We needed to see if you were a team player, if you would put family first. And you passed initially, I'll give you that. But lately, you've been so stingy, so concerned about being paid back. I felt like I couldn't breathe. A test you've been lying to me for our entire marriage." "Not lying," he corrected smoothly. "Strategic planning. Mom's investments are real and they're going to pay off big time. Your money is working for all of us now." My mind flashed to the new car Patricia had purchased last month, the expensive landscaping at her home, the designer clothes she always wore. There were no financial troubles, were there? She's been spending my money on herself. Before Ryan could answer, the front door opened and Patricia walked in without knocking, a habit that had always bothered me. "Ryan, did you tell her?" she called as she entered the dining room. When she saw my face, she sighed. I see you did. She's not taking it well. The casual way they discussed me, as if I wasn't sitting right there, broke something inside me. Taking what well, Patricia? The fact that you and your son have been stealing from me. Patricia's perfectly made-up face hardened. Don't be vulgar, Nora. Nobody stole anything. We're family and family resources are shared. Ryan told me how your parents raised you with such provincial ideas about money. We're simply helping you think bigger. I stood up, needing to put physical distance between myself and these two strangers who had been masquerading as my family. I want it back. All of it. Every penny you've taken from me. Ryan laughed, the sound nothing like the warm chuckle I had once loved. That money's gone invested, and technically half of what's in your account is mine anyway, according to state law. You should be grateful we included you in our family at all. Patricia nodded in agreement. A kindergarten teacher from a nobody family in Michigan. Ryan could have married a doctor or a lawyer, someone from our social circle who understands how things work. In third grade, I corrected automatically the teacher in me, responding even as my world collapsed. I teach third grade. Whatever. Patricia dismissed with a wave of her manicured hand. The point is, you should be thanking us for the opportunity, not questioning our methods. As they continued to justify their actions, speaking to me as if I was a child throwing a tantrum, I felt a strange calm descend. These people were not my family. They never had been. And I needed to get away from them immediately. I don't remember packing my bag. The next thing I clearly recall is sitting in my car in the driveway calling my best friend Jamie. Through the Bluetooth connection, my voice surprisingly steady. Can I stay with you for a few days? I asked when she answered. I need to get away from Ryan. Jamie didn't hesitate. Of course. Do you need me to come get you? No, I'm already in my car. I'll explain when I get there. 20 minutes later, I was sitting at Jamie's kitchen table, a cup of tea growing cold in front of me as I recounted what had happened. Saying it out loud made it seem even more surreal. They've been planning this all along, I concluded. I think the entire relationship was a con. They targeted me, Jamie. They saw a responsible person with savings and decided to take it. Jamie, an accountant with a pragmatic approach to problems, was already making lists. First, you need a lawyer. Tomorrow morning, first thing. I know someone who specializes in divorce and financial fraud. Second, you need to freeze your credit and change all your passwords. Third, you need to document everything before they try to cover their tracks. I nodded, grateful for her clear thinking when my own mind felt foggy with shock. I just can't believe I didn't see it. I'm usually so careful with money. This isn't about you being careless, Jamie said firmly. This is about them being predators. They manipulated you emotionally to get what they wanted. That's not your fault. I spent that night on Jamie's pull-out sofa, staring at the ceiling as I replayed every moment of my relationship with Ryan, seeing all the warning signs I had missed. The way he had coincidentally shown up at school events after our initial meeting. How quickly he had wanted to meet my parents, asking detailed questions about their finances under the guise of professional interest. His insistence that I maintain my separate savings account rather than combining everything after marriage. It's important for spouses to maintain some financial independence, he had said, which had seemed enlightened at the time. Now I realized he had just wanted easy access to my money without having to consult me about his own spending. The next morning, Jamie went to work, but not before setting up an appointment for me with her lawyer friend Sophia Mendez. I spent the day making lists of every financial transaction I could remember, changing passwords to all my accounts, and fielding increasingly aggressive texts from Ryan. You're being ridiculous. Come home now. Stop embarrassing us both and act like an adult. This tantrum is only hurting yourself. Patricia's messages were even more manipulative, swinging between faux concern and thinly veiled threats. We're all so worried about you, darling. Ryan says you're having some emotional difficulties. Perhaps teaching is too stressful for you right now. We could help you find something less taxing. You really should consider the consequences of your actions on Ryan's career and reputation. I didn't respond to any of them, instead showing the messages to Sophia when I met with her that afternoon. This is textbook gaslighting, she said after reviewing everything. They're trying to make you doubt your own perceptions to make you feel like you're the one with the problem. Sophia was direct about my legal options, which were unfortunately limited. Because you're married, the money transferred to joint accounts becomes marital property. The loans to his mother will be harder to recover, especially without written agreements. My heart sank, but Sophia wasn't finished. However, she continued, The unauthorized transfer from your personal account is a different matter. That could potentially constitute fraud, especially if you can prove Ryan accessed your account without permission. She advised me to return to the house when Ryan wasn't there to collect important documents and any evidence that might help my case. And Nora, she added as I was leaving, change your email passwords too. People like Ryan and Patricia leave digital footprints. The next day, I gathered my courage and went back to the house during Ryan's regular squash game. Using my key, I quickly gathered birth certificates, our marriage license, tax returns, and other important papers. On impulse, I also took Ryan's laptop. He had often left it open at home, and I knew he sometimes used it for personal emails that weren't on his work-monitored computer. Back at Jamie's apartment, I opened the laptop with trembling hands. Ryan's password was the same one he used for most things, his college football jersey number, followed by his birth year. I had never snooped through his computer before respecting his privacy, as I expected him to respect mine. How naive that seemed now. It didn't take long to find the evidence. There in his email were dozens of exchanges with Patricia dating back to before our wedding, explicitly discussing their plan to access my savings. One email from Patricia sent just after our engagement made me physically ill. She's perfect for our purposes, responsible with money trusting and eager to please. By my estimate, we can extract at least $50,000 from her within the first year if we play this right. The wedding will be our first test, see how far she'll bend to accommodate our wishes. Another email, sent just after I had given Patricia the first loan for her supposed property taxes. First phase successful. She handed over the money with minimal resistance. Ryan, make sure you continue to frame this as family loyalty. That seems to be her weakness. She's desperate to be accepted by us. The emails continued chronicling their systematic plan to drain my finances while maintaining the illusion of a loving family. There were even spreadsheets attached, tracking how much they had taken and projections for future extractions. I forwarded everything to Sophia and to my own email before shutting down the laptop, feeling simultaneously violated and vindicated. I wasn't crazy. I hadn't imagined their betrayal. If anything, the reality was even worse than I had suspected. The painful truth was staring me in the face. My entire marriage had been a calculated con. The man I had loved, the family I thought I had joined, the future I had planned, none of it was real. It had all been an elaborate scheme to take advantage of my trusting nature and financial responsibility. The realization was devastating, but it also ignited something in me. A determination that had been dormant during my marriage suddenly flared to life. They had taken my money, but they wouldn't take my dignity or my future. Not anymore. With the evidence from Ryan's emails, Sophia helped me develop a strategic plan for confrontation. Instead of filing for divorce immediately, we would first address the financial fraud. This approach would give us leverage in the divorce proceedings that would inevitably follow. We need to be methodical, Sophia advised. These types of people typically respond to one thing: the threat of public exposure and legal consequences. We compiled all the evidence, the emails between Ryan and Patricia, bank statements showing the pattern of transfers, text messages documenting their manipulation, and the unauthorized withdrawal from my personal account. Sophia then drafted a formal letter outlining the allegations and potential legal ramifications, including criminal charges for fraud. The letter was delivered to Ryan via certified mail requiring his signature. Within hours of receiving it, my phone exploded with calls and texts. "You've completely lost your mind," Ryan's first voicemail seethed. "Lawyer, up all you want. It's your word against ours, and guess who people will believe? The respected financial advisor or the emotionally unstable teacher?" His attempts at intimidation continued, growing more desperate with each message. Patricia joined in calling my school principal to suggest I was having a mental breakdown and shouldn't be trusted with children. Fortunately, my principal, who had known me for years, recognized the call for what it was: a smear campaign. Ryan also began spreading rumors among our mutual friends that I had gambling debts or a shopping addiction, trying to explain why our marriage was suddenly in trouble. Some people believed him distancing themselves from me without ever hearing my side. Others reached out privately, expressing concern and offering support. The social fallout was painful but clarifying. I discovered who my true friends were and found strength in unexpected places. My colleagues at school formed a protective circle around me. Jamie and her husband offered their guest room for as long as I needed it. Even my students' parents, sensing something was wrong, sent encouraging notes and small gifts. Through it all, I maintained my composure at work, continuing to teach with the same dedication I always had. My third graders became an unexpected source of healing. Their straightforward questions, innocent wisdom, and unconditional acceptance reminded me daily of the person I truly was, not the victim Ryan and Patricia had tried to make me. After 2 weeks of ignored messages and legal maneuvering, Ryan finally agreed to a meeting with both attorneys present. Patricia insisted on attending as well, claiming she was an injured party in the situation. The meeting was scheduled at Sophia's office, neutral territory, where I would feel safe and supported. Walking into that conference room was one of the hardest things I've ever done. Seeing Ryan, the man I had loved and trusted, the man who had betrayed me so completely, sitting there in his expensive suit, looking untroubled, made my stomach clench. Patricia sat beside him, elegant as always, in a cream-coloured pantsuit, her face a mask of concern. But I was no longer the same woman who had left our house in tears 2 weeks earlier. I had spent those weeks rebuilding my sense of self, reminding myself of my worth, beyond the relationship that had been built on lies. I sat across from them with my back straight and my gaze steady. "Thank you for agreeing to meet," Sophia began professionally. "We're here to discuss the serious allegations of financial fraud and to reach an agreement that will prevent this from moving to criminal proceedings." Ryan's attorney, a sharp-featured man in an even more expensive suit, scoffed. "These allegations are baseless. My client categorically denies any wrongdoing. This is clearly an attempt to extract an unreasonable settlement in the divorce." Sophia smiled thinly and opened a folder. "Then perhaps you should review these materials before making such definitive statements." She slid copies of the emails across the table. The colour drained from Ryan's face as he scanned the first page. Patricia leaned over to look, her perfectly composed expression cracking slightly. "Where did you get these?" Ryan demanded, looking directly at me for the first time. "You hacked my email. That's illegal." I remained silent, letting Sophia handle the response. My client accessed a computer in her marital home using a password freely shared with her during the course of their marriage. Nothing illegal about that. The content of those emails, however, clearly documents conspiracy to commit fraud. Patricia recovered her composure quickly, her eyes filling with tears on cue. "This is all a misunderstanding," she said, her voice quavering perfectly. "I was in financial trouble and Ryan was helping me. We may have been informal about the arrangements, but there was no intent to defraud anyone." "Save the performance," I said quietly, finding my voice. "You wrote, and I quote, 'She's perfect for our purposes. By my estimate, we can extract at least $50,000 from her within the first year if we play this right.' That doesn't sound like a misunderstanding to me." Patricia's tears dried instantly, her expression hardening. "You ungrateful little nobody. Do you have any idea who we are in this community? Who would believe you over us?" "The district attorney for starters," Sophia interjected smoothly. "Financial elder abuse is taken very seriously these days. While Nora isn't elderly, the same legal principles apply to financial exploitation within relationships where there's an imbalance of power or trust." Ryan and his attorney requested a private consultation, stepping out of the room for nearly 30 minutes. When they returned, Ryan's demeanor had changed completely. Gone was the intimidating bravado, replaced by a calculating businessman ready to negotiate. "What do you want?" he asked directly. "Full restitution of all funds taken from my client, both the direct transfer and all so-called loans," Sophia replied, "plus interest and legal fees. In return, we won't pursue criminal charges." "That's extortion," Patricia spat. "No, it's a settlement offer," Sophia corrected. "Extortion would be threatening to expose your criminal activities for personal gain. We're simply offering you a chance to make financial amends and avoid public prosecution." Ryan and his attorney huddled together, whispering intensely. Finally, Ryan looked up. "We can return the most recent transfer immediately. The rest would need to be paid in installments. My mother's investments haven't matured yet." I couldn't help it. I laughed. The sound was so unexpected in the tense room that everyone stared at me. "There were never any investments, were there?" I asked, shaking my head. "Just like there were never any property taxes due, or medical bills or roof repairs. It was all a lie." Ryan had the grace to look slightly embarrassed, but Patricia remained defiant. "We would have paid you back eventually. You're making a mountain out of a molehill." $40,000 is hardly a molehill," I replied evenly. "And this isn't about money anymore. It's about justice." We spent the next 2 hours negotiating the terms of repayment. In the end, Ryan agreed to return the recent $14,000 transfer immediately and pay back the remaining amount over 12 months with interest. The agreement included penalties for missed payments and a clause stating that any default would result in the evidence being turned over to the district attorney. As we prepared to leave, I found myself face to face with Ryan in the hallway. For a moment, I saw a flicker of the man I thought I had married, charming, apologetic, ready to win me back. "Nora?" he began, softly reaching for my hand. This got out of hand. But we could still make this work. We had something good before all this. I pulled my hand away, seeing the manipulation for what it was. "No, Ryan, we never had anything real. You made sure of that the moment you saw me as a target instead of a partner." Walking away from him was the first step toward rebuilding my life, a life that would be entirely my own again. The divorce proceedings were less contentious than I had feared, largely because Ryan knew what evidence I held. He agreed to a settlement that, while not particularly generous, at least didn't leave me financially devastated. I kept my car, my personal possessions, and received the agreed-upon repayment for the money taken from me. The emotional recovery was harder than the legal one. I started seeing a therapist, Dr. Harper, who specialized in helping people recover from betrayal trauma. Our weekly sessions became an anchor in my life as I navigated the choppy waters of rebuilding. "What you're experiencing is similar to grief," Dr. Harper explained during one session. "You're mourning not just the end of your marriage, but the loss of the future you had imagined and the person you thought Ryan was." I nodded, tears flowing freely. "I keep replaying everything, wondering how I could have been so blind." "That's a normal response, but not a productive one," she said gently. "You weren't blind, Nora. You were trusting in a relationship where trust should have been safe. The failure was theirs, not yours." Learning to trust my instincts again was a slow process. For months, I second-guessed every decision, every interaction, wondering if I was missing something important. Dr. Harper helped me develop tools to distinguish between healthy caution and paralyzing fear, to recognize the difference between normal relationship dynamics and manipulation. Meanwhile, the court-ordered repayments from Ryan arrived punctually each month. I suspected this was less about honoring his obligation and more about avoiding the consequences of default. Either way, I was gradually rebuilding my financial security. I threw myself back into teaching with renewed passion. My third-grade classroom became a haven where I could focus on making a positive difference in young lives. Inspired by my own experience, I developed a simple financial literacy program for my students, teaching basic concepts about saving and responsible spending through games and projects. My principal was impressed with the curriculum I created. "This is exactly the kind of practical life skill our students need," she said, after observing a lesson where my students were learning about budgeting by planning an imaginary class party. "Would you consider developing this into a district-wide program?" This unexpected opportunity gave me a new sense of purpose. I spent evenings and weekends refining the curriculum, creating age-appropriate activities for different grade levels, and designing parent resources to reinforce the lessons at home. The work was healing, transforming my painful experience into something that could help others avoid similar pitfalls. 6 months after this separation, I received an unexpected email from Angela, Ryan's younger sister. We had met only a few times during my marriage, as she lived on the opposite coast and visited rarely. The subject line read simply, "I believe you." "I've always known who my mother really is," Angela wrote. "I've spent years in therapy dealing with her manipulation and control. When Ryan told me what happened with you, his version didn't ring true. I suspected there was more to the story, and I was right. Wasn't I?" I responded cautiously, not wanting to be drawn into another trap. But after several exchanges, I became convinced of Angela's sincerity. She shared her own stories of Patricia's psychological and financial manipulation patterns that had been established long before I entered the picture. "Ryan wasn't always like this," Angela wrote. "Mom molded him into her image. I got away before she could do the same to me, but I've always felt guilty for leaving him in her clutches. That's not an excuse for what he did to you, just context." Angela also revealed that I wasn't the first woman they had targeted. There had been others before me, though none had fought back as effectively. This information was both disturbing and validating. It reinforced that what had happened wasn't my fault and strengthened my resolve to hold them accountable. With Angela's encouragement, I decided to share my story more widely. I started with a small presentation at a women's financial empowerment workshop hosted by my credit union. My hands trembled as I stood before the group of 30 women, but as I began to speak, my voice grew stronger. "I'm not a financial expert," I began. "I'm a third-grade teacher who learned some hard lessons about financial abuse. If sharing my experience can help even one person avoid what I went through, then something good will have come from it." The response was overwhelming. After my presentation, women lined up to speak with me, many with tears in their eyes. as they shared similar experiences or expressed gratitude for the warning signs I had identified. Some had escaped financially abusive relationships. Others were still in them, gathering the courage and resources to leave. The credit union asked me to make my presentation a regular event. Local women's shelters requested that I speak to their residents. A community college invited me to contribute to their personal finance course. My painful experience was being transformed into a platform for education and advocacy. As my public speaking increased, so did awareness of Ryan and Patricia's actions within our community. Several women contacted me privately, sharing that Ryan had approached them after my departure, using similar tactics to those he had used with me. Armed with knowledge from my experience, they had recognized the red flags and kept their distance. The financial literacy program I had developed for my classroom was adopted district-wide, bringing me professional recognition and a small stipend that helped accelerate my financial recovery. I started dating again cautiously and with much clearer boundaries than before. Life was moving forward one careful step at a time. 1 year after discovering Ryan's betrayal, I received the final repayment. The check arrived in a plain envelope, with no note, just a signature on the check that looked hastily scrawled. I deposited it immediately, then sat in my car in the bank parking lot, overwhelmed by the symbolic significance of this moment. The money had been returned, but what I had gained in the process was worth far more. Strength, wisdom, community, purpose, a deeper understanding of myself and what I truly valued. The price had been high, but the lessons were invaluable. 1 year and 2 months after leaving Ryan, I was fully settled into my new life. I had moved from Jamie's guest room to a small but charming apartment of my own, decorated exactly as I liked, with no one else's preferences to consider. My savings account was healthy again, my career was thriving, and I had even begun a promising new relationship with someone who showed nothing but respect for my independence. I was having coffee with Jamie at our favorite local cafe when I spotted Patricia entering with a group of expensively dressed women. She hadn't noticed me yet, laughing as she ordered some complicated drink modification. Jamie followed my gaze and tensed. "We can leave if you want." I considered it briefly, then shook my head. "No, this is my place too. I won't let her chase me out." Inevitably, Patricia spotted me as she waited for her order. Her eyes widened slightly, and for a moment I thought she might pretend not to see me. Instead, she excused herself from her friends and approached our table, her expression a carefully constructed mask of civility. "Nora?" she said, her voice pitched to carry just enough for nearby tables to hear. "How unexpected to see you here. You're looking well." I smiled politely. "Hello, Patricia. Yes, life has been good to me." She glanced at Jamie, then back to me. "I heard you've been telling stories about our family around town. That seems rather petty, don't you think? The old me would have been intimidated by this subtle threat, would have apologized or tried to explain. But that woman was gone, replaced by someone much stronger. I haven't told stories, Patricia. I've told my truth. There's a significant difference." Patricia's perfectly lipsticked mouth tightened. "Ryan has had to deal with quite a bit of fallout from your perspective on events. Actions have consequences," I replied evenly. "You taught me that, actually. It was one of the few honest lessons I received from either of you." She leaned closer, dropping her voice. "You think you're so clever, don't you? But this isn't over." I met her gaze calmly. "Yes, Patricia, it is. You have no power over me anymore. None at all." Something in my tone must have convinced her, because she straightened up, adjusting her designer handbag on her shoulder. "Well, I should get back to my friends." "You should," I agreed. "And Patricia, I forgive you." She blinked, clearly caught off guard. "Excuse me." "I forgive you," I repeated. "Not for your sake, but for mine. Carrying anger is exhausting and you're not worth the energy anymore." Patricia had no response to that. She turned on her heel and rejoined her friends, her back rigid with indignation. Jamie and I watched her go, then burst into simultaneous laughter. "Did you see her face?" Jamie whispered. "That was magnificent." It had been, but more importantly, I had meant every word. I had forgiven them, not because they deserved it, but because I deserved peace. Later that week, I heard from Angela that Ryan had moved across the country, accepting a job in California after his local client base had dwindled. The rumors about his treatment of me had spread through his professional network, making it difficult for him to attract new clients, particularly women with substantial assets to manage. I took no pleasure in his professional difficulties. Despite everything, I didn't wish him ill. I simply wanted him far away from me and unable to harm others as he had harmed me. His departure felt like the closing of a chapter, the final period at the end of a painful sentence in my life story. My own story continued to unfold in unexpected and wonderful ways. The financial literacy program I had developed was being implemented in schools across our district and had caught the attention of educators in neighbouring districts as well. I had been promoted to lead teacher at my school, a position that came with additional responsibilities, but also greater influence over curriculum development. The support groups I had begun facilitating for survivors of financial abuse had grown from a single monthly meeting in a church basement to multiple weekly sessions in various locations around the city. Women and some men came to share their experiences, find solidarity, and gather practical resources for recovery. More importantly, I had regained my sense of self. The woman who had been so desperate to please, so willing to compromise her own well-being for the approval of others, was gone. In her place was someone who understood her worth, who set clear boundaries, who trusted herself above all others. The money Ryan and Patricia had taken from me was ultimately inconsequential. What mattered was what I had gained, a profound understanding that financial independence is a crucial form of freedom, especially for women. That financial abuse is a form of domestic abuse, often invisible, but deeply damaging. That standing up for yourself, even when it's terrifying, is the foundation of self-respect. I now build relationships based on mutual respect and honesty. I discuss financial values early and openly. I watch for red flags and trust my instincts when something feels wrong. These aren't signs of trauma or paranoia. They're markers of wisdom earned through difficult experience. My story isn't unique. Financial abuse affects countless people, often hidden behind closed doors, shrouded in shame and secrecy. By sharing my experience, I hope to shine a light on this insidious form of control and empower others to protect themselves. If you've ever experienced financial manipulation or abuse, know that you're not alone. There is life after betrayal, a rich and fulfilling life built on your own terms. The road to recovery isn't easy, but it leads to a place of strength you might never have discovered otherwise. Have you ever faced financial betrayal or manipulation? How did you recover and rebuild? Share your story in the comments below. Your experience might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. And if this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might benefit from it. Together, we can break the silence around financial abuse and help each other find the path to true independence. Thank you for listening, and remember, your financial security is worth protecting, and so are you.